When Airbnb went public in December 2020, the official offer price was $68 a share. But when you opened your brokerage app that morning to buy in, the price was already $146. That $78 gap didn't appear by accident. It was a transfer of wealth from retail investors directly into institutional accounts. And it happened before a single public trade was executed. The 18.8% average first day pop you keep hearing about, that return is calculated from the $68 price. However, you never had access to that price. Quick definition before we go further. An IPO, or initial public offering, is simply when a private company sells stock to the public for the first time. It's how early backers, founders, venture capitalists, private equity convert their private stakes into cash. The company gets capital, the insiders get liquidity, and retail investors get the bill. In this video, you'll see exactly how that gap gets engineered, what the 3 to 5 year data actually looks like after the hype fades, and a 5-step checklist to stop buying into excitement and start making disciplined decisions. If you think IPOs are a ground floor ticket, what comes next will change how you look at every new listing.
But first, this video is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial, investment, or legal advice. Trading and Investing Hub is not a licensed financial advisor. Please do your own research and consult with a qualified professional before making any financial decisions.
To understand why retail investors almost never capture the pop, you need to understand who actually runs the IPO process and whose interests they're serving. Think of it like a restaurant with a secret menu. When a private company decides to go public, it hires investment banks called underwriters. Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, these are the firms attached to major deals. Their job is to set the offer price, build demand, and decide who gets shares before the stock ever trades on an exchange. They do this through a roadshow, a series of pitches to institutional investors, pension funds, mutual funds, hedge funds, where they gauge appetite and fill their book of orders. You're not at that table. You don't even know the table exists until the meal's already over. Here's the part most people miss. Those institutional clients receive share allocations at the offer price. The general public does not. By the time Airbnb started trading, the offer price was history. The stock opened at $146, a 112% jump from where institutions got in. That leap happened overnight, in a closed process, before a single retail investor could act. The widely reported first day pop is measured from $68, not from the $146 you'd actually pay. Now here's where it gets worse. This underpricing isn't accidental. Banks deliberately set the offer price below where they expect the stock to open, because doing so hands their institutional clients an immediate, near-guaranteed gain on day one. Those clients remember who gave them access, and they keep coming back for future deals. It's a relationship business, and retail investors aren't in the relationship. From 1980 through 2024, the total amount of value transferred this way, what researchers call money left on the table, exceeded $237 billion across US IPOs. That's $237 billion that flowed into institutional allocations, not to investors buying on the open market. Now here's where the FOMO loop kicks in. Financial media reports the pop using the offer price as the baseline. Retail viewers see plus 112% on day one and flood into the stock. But what they're actually doing is buying from the institutions that receive shares at $68 and are now selling into the wave of incoming demand. The retail buyer isn't sharing in the gain, they're providing the exit. And when the pop doesn't materialize at all, retail absorbs that too. SmileDirectClub, priced at $23 per share in 2019, opened nearly 28% lower on its first day and never recovered. The company filed for bankruptcy in 2023. Whether the stock gaps up and institutions sell into your enthusiasm, or gaps down and you're left holding a deteriorating position, the structure of the IPO process puts retail buyers at a disadvantage either way. So if day one is already rigged against you, the obvious question is whether waiting fixes the problem. The long-term data is even more sobering. Let's say you skip day one entirely. You let the circus settle, opened your brokerage app a week later, and bought shares at a calmer price. Smart move, right? Not necessarily, because the structural problems don't disappear after the opening bell. They just take longer to show up. Academic research tracking thousands of US listings found that IPOs underperformed comparable public companies by 20.2% over the 3 years following their debut. That's not a bad quarter. That's a persistent multi-year drag that erases the advantage of getting in early. The Renaissance IPO ETF, which holds a broad basket of newly listed stocks, returned just 0.8% annualized return over the 5 years ending mid-2025. A plain S&P 500 index fund returned 15.9% in the same window. Here's your quick filter right now. If an IPO you're eyeing is unprofitable and trading at a steep premium to its peers, history says the math doesn't work. That single check alone eliminates most of the statistical traps before you spend another minute on research. Three forces drive this persistent lag. Companies go public at the exact moment they can command the highest valuation, peak optimism, peak story, peak price. So there's no margin built in for public buyers. Many listings happen before the business model has survived a recession or hit profitability, and unprofitable IPOs show substantially worse long-term outcomes than profitable ones. Then the lockup expiration hits, typically 90 to 180 days post-IPO, and insiders who've been locked out of selling suddenly flood the market with supply, right when retail investors have started feeling comfortable holding. Uber pulls all three forces together perfectly. A household name priced at $45 in 2019 opened below that and spent years grinding under the weight of a valuation that assumed flawless execution across every market it touched. Being a great product and being a great stock are completely different things, and Uber spent years proving that distinction at retail investors' expense. Airbnb shows the traits you're actually hunting for. It priced during the pandemic, peak fear, minimum travel, maximum uncertainty. The business had an asset-light model, a genuine competitive moat, and management that cut costs fast enough to stay alive. That combination meant the IPO price actually left room for the company to grow into its valuation rather than chase it forever. These traits, profitability trajectory, durable competitive advantage, rational pricing relative to conditions, are all visible before you invest. So here's the 5-point playbook. Before you run through it, you need one tool, the S1. Every company going public files this document with the SEC before shares trade. Think of it as the company's full confession. It covers how the business makes money, what could go wrong, who's running it, and what they plan to do with the cash you're about to hand them. It's written by the company's lawyers to present the best possible picture. So you read it like a detective, not a fan. It's free on the SEC's Edgar database on its website. Most retail buyers never open it. That's the edge. Point 1. Open the S1 and go straight to use of proceeds. This section tells you exactly where your money is going after the IPO closes. If the proceeds are earmarked for R&D, building new infrastructure, or expanding into new markets, the company is using the capital to grow. That's what you want to see. But if a significant chunk is going toward repaying loans the founders took out against the business, or structured to buy out early investors and venture capital funds, you're not funding the company's future, you're funding their exit. The IPO is their liquidity event, not yours. That's a red flag serious enough to stop reading and move on. Point 2, run a peer multiple comparison. A multiple is simply a ratio that tells you how much investors are paying per dollar of revenue or earnings. Price to sales is the most useful when a company isn't profitable yet. Divide the market cap by annual revenue and compare that number to the 2 or 3 closest publicly traded competitors. If the IPO is priced at 15 times sales and its profitable competitors trade at 8 times, the stock needs to nearly double its business just to match what already exists in the market. That's not a growth opportunity, that's a gap you're being asked to finance. Any IPO trading at a steep premium to established peers without a clear, specific reason deserves serious skepticism. Point 3, check the underwriter tier. Not every investment bank carries the same weight. When Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, or JP Morgan puts their name on the cover of an S1 as lead underwriter, they're putting their institutional reputation behind that deal. These firms are selective because a string of bad IPOs cost them future business. That doesn't make the stock a guaranteed winner, but it does mean a level of due diligence was applied that a second-tier bank might skip. It's one signal among several, not a green light on its own. Point 4, apply the 180-day rule. The lockup period, typically 90 to 180 days, prevents insiders from selling immediately after the IPO. When it expires, millions of shares can hit the market at once. What insiders do at that moment tells you more than any analyst note. If executives and founders hold their shares, they're saying the stock is worth more at current prices. If they sell heavily the day the restriction lifts, they're saying the opposite with their own money. Waiting through the lockup expiration also lets you see 2 to 3 earnings reports, giving you real performance data instead of projections written by the company's own bankers. Patience here isn't passive. It's the most aggressive form of risk management available to a retail investor. Point 5. Cap your exposure. Even after doing everything right, IPOs carry risks that established companies don't. 1 to 5% of your total portfolio is the ceiling for any single IPO position. One SmileDirectClub shouldn't undo years of disciplined compounding. If the company is genuinely great, a 5% position in it will still move your portfolio meaningfully. If it blows up, the damage stays contained. The playbook doesn't guarantee winners, but it stops you from being the last one holding the bag. IPOs are designed to benefit sellers. That's not cynicism, it's just the structure. But a disciplined process shifts the odds back towards you. Pull up one upcoming IPO right now. Find the Use of Proceeds section in the S1 and set a 180-day calendar alert for the lockup expiration. 2 steps, 10 minutes, and you'll know more than most people who buy on day one. Have you ever tried to get IPO shares at the offer price? What happened? Drop it in the comments. If this helped, hit the like button and subscribe for more trading and investing resources. And drop a comment below to suggest a topic to break down next.
The illest ciphers open, no joking. Trading and Investing Hub. Yeah, that's the spot. We teach you how to get the capital and make the profits bubble up. Trading and Investing Hub.